Dust swirled in the air as the ground shook. Sirens wailed across the colony. Explosions flashed in the distance. The people of Varos 7 ran through the streets, confused and terrified. Above them, dark shapes moved across the sky. Alien ships, they came without warning. Commander Elara Voss stood in the control tower, eyes fixed on the monitors. Her jaw tightened as she watched the feed. The colony's defense system, already weak from years of neglect, was barely holding. A few turrets fired back, but the enemy ships moved too fast. "Shields down to 28%, said Lieutenant Rico, his voice shaking. "Redirect power from the mining grid," Elara ordered, "and get everyone into the shelters." "They won't all fit," Rico replied. "We have too many, then find more space. Use the old tunnels if you have to." Elara's voice was steady. She didn't have time for fear. She had trained for this, but not like this. Not without backup, not without warning, and not this far from Earth. Weeks ago, she had sent a distress signal. No response. Not from Central Command. Not from any nearby patrols. Just silence. She looked out the window. Fires burned near the edge of the colony. The enemy hadn't landed yet, but that would come next. The Zarkari always hit from above first, soften the target, then move in for the kill. She had read the reports. She had seen what they did to unprotected worlds. This colony wasn't supposed to be a war zone. It was just a mining outpost. Old equipment, old ships, and people who had never held a weapon in their lives. Elara opened the comms channel. "This is Commander Voss. All defense units, report to your stations. All civilians, move underground immediately. This is not a drill." She turned to her second-in-command, Sergeant Mara Tain. "How many fighters do we have?" "5, Mara said grimly. "And 2 barely fly. The rest were scrapped for parts last month." Elara nodded slowly. "We'll use what we have." "You really think we can hold them off?" "No," Elara admitted. "But we can buy time." "For who?" "No one's coming." Elara met her eyes. "Someone will." Down below, chaos filled the colony. Parents clutched children, miners carried wounded friends, and volunteers tried to keep order. One man stopped and looked up at the sky. Trails of fire cut through the clouds. More enemy ships arriving. In the control tower, Elara checked the radar. 23 enemy ships. Too many, way too many. She activated the signal beacon again, resending the distress call. "Message sent," Rico said quietly. "Same as before." "Good," Elara said. "Keep sending it. Every hour." Mara stared at the screen, then back at Elara. "Even if someone does hear us, we're days away from the nearest fleet. Then we hold for days." Elara said. "We hold until someone answers." Outside, another explosion shook the tower. Dust rained from the ceiling. But Elara didn't flinch. This was her colony. These were her people, and she would not leave them. High above Varos 7, inside the lead Zarkari warship, High Marshal Krazek stood tall before the holographic display. His sharp, bony features twitched in satisfaction as he watched the human colony burn in patches of red and orange. His long fingers tapped the control panel slowly, rhythmically. "Resistance is weak," one of his lieutenants said in a low, buzzing voice. "Their weapons are outdated. Defenses scattered." "Good," Krazek replied. "Crush them slowly. Let them feel fear before the end." He turned to the viewport, where the dusty planet turned slowly below. The humans always cry for help, but no one ever comes for the outer worlds. On Varos 7, Elara stood in the war room of the main command center. The building had once been a refinery office. Now it held the colony's last working computers, communication systems, and power controls. The lights flickered as backup power kicked in. Sergeant Mara entered, face tight with concern. "We've confirmed the enemy, Zarkari." Elara already knew. She had guessed it from the attack pattern. Clean, precise, heartless. "They want the planet," she said. "It's not just a raid." Mara nodded. Scouts spotted troop carriers in orbit. Ground invasion is coming. Alara crossed her arms. How long until they land? Maybe a day, maybe less. Alara looked at the map on the table. Red markers showed enemy ships surrounding the colony. She traced a finger along the edge, planning a fallback position. But there was no real fallback. They were trapped. Lieutenant Rico entered behind Mara. He looked tired, dark rings under his eyes, hands stained with grease. "The emergency tunnels are filling up," he said. "We've got about 800 people underground. No food storage, barely any water. We'll ration what we have," Alara said. "What about the fighters? 2 can fly. The others are scrap. And we don't have enough pilots." Alara nodded. "We'll fly them ourselves if we have to." That night, the colony was quiet. Too quiet. Alara sat alone in her small office, staring at a faded photo on the wall. Her and her younger brother, smiling in flight suits. He had died during a pirate attack 5 years ago. She had been too late to save him. She had promised herself then, no one else gets left behind. She tapped the desk panel. The distress signal was still active, still repeating the same message every hour. No answer. A soft knock. Mara stepped in. "You should get some sleep." "So should you," Alara said. "I've been thinking," Mara said. "No one's coming, Alara. We're too far, too small. Earth has bigger problems." Alara looked at her. "I know. Then why keep hoping?" Alara stood. "Because hope is all we have. And if we give that up, we're already dead." Far away in space, the Zarkari fleet moved slowly into final position. High Marshal Krazek watched as his ships formed a circle around the colony. "No messages have reached Earth," his communications officer reported. "We are jamming all transmissions effectively." "Good," Krazek said. "Let them scream into the void. Let their hope rot." He gave the order. "Prepare the ground assault. Begin tomorrow. No survivors." Back in the colony, Alara walked the streets in the early dawn. The dust was thick, and the sky glowed a pale red. She passed injured civilians, volunteers, children curled up near the entrance to the underground tunnels. Everyone looked to her, waiting. She didn't have magic words, but she gave them what they needed: calm, control, presence. As she reached the edge of the settlement, she looked up at the sky. She couldn't see them, but she knew the enemy was out there, waiting, and she knew the next day could be their last. The sun rose over Varos 7, weak and red through the dust-filled sky. The colony was quiet, too quiet. It was the kind of silence that came before disaster. Commander Alara Voss stood at the edge of the landing field, watching her engineers prepare the 2 remaining fighter ships. They were patched up, barely flight-worthy, but it was all they had. "Engines are stable for now," Rico said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But if you push them too hard, they'll burn out." "Then we won't push them," Alara said. "We'll fly smart." Behind her, Sergeant Mara approached with a grim look. Scouts saw enemy transports entering the upper atmosphere. "They're coming." Alara nodded. "We knew they would." Mara hesitated. "Alara, maybe we should evacuate. Abandon the colony. Head for the mountains. We can hide. We can survive." Alara didn't answer right away. She looked toward the distant hills, then back at the colony. Her people. The wounded, the elderly, the children hiding in tunnels beneath their feet. "If we run," she said, "we leave them behind." "You know I won't do that." Mara lowered her eyes. "I had to ask." Later, in the command center, Alara sat alone. The stress weighed on her shoulders like armor. Her fingers hovered over the desk screen. The signal beacon was still running, sending a distress call into deep space, hoping someone, anyone, would hear it. She tapped the edge of the screen, and the signal repeated again. "This is Commander Alara Voss, of Varos 7. Under attack by Zarkari forces. We need immediate assistance. Civilians in danger. Please respond." But no voice came back. Alara leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. 5 years ago, a younger Alara sat in a small control room on a transport ship. Across from her sat her younger brother Leon, grinning as he adjusted his helmet. "We're going to make history," Leon had said. First siblings to finish the Earth Flight Academy in the same year. You always say that, Alara replied. He laughed, because it'll be true, but they never made it. A week later, Leon's transport was attacked by pirates. No one came, no help, no rescue. Alara had been minutes too late. Since then she had sworn never to wait again, never to assume someone else would step in. A soft knock at the door pulled her back to the present. Mara entered, holding a datapad. There's something you should see. She placed the pad on the table. Footage played. A shaky video from one of the outer security drones. Zarkari dropships, hundreds of them, landing in formation, preparing for a full assault. They'll hit us tonight, Mara said. We don't have the weapons to stop them. Alara stood. Her voice was calm. Then we slow them down. We protect who we can, and we make them fight for every inch. You still think Earth will come? Alara looked out the window. The sun was beginning to set. I believe in people, she said, and I believe someone is listening. As night fell, Alara gathered the colony's defenders, old miners with rifles, engineers holding shock grenades, volunteers ready to protect their homes. Only 20 fighters, standing between thousands of civilians and an invading army. She stood before them, straight and steady. I won't lie to you, she said. The enemy is strong. We're outnumbered. We're outgunned. The crowd was silent. But we are not broken. We are not forgotten. We hold the line, not because we think we can win, but because the people behind us need time. They need hope, and if we can give them even one more hour of life, then it's worth it. Murmurs of agreement, nods, eyes that had been filled with fear now shone with courage. Alara turned toward the battlefield. She knew the enemy was coming. She knew they might not survive, but she would not give up. The sky above, Varos 7, glowed with streaks of fire. The Zarkari dropships were coming fast, black insect-like vessels cutting through the atmosphere. The air trembled with their roar. Commander Alara Voss stood at the outer wall of the colony, her helmet clipped to her belt. Her eyes were locked on the horizon. Behind her, the defenders were in place. 20 soldiers, 2 half-working fighters, a wall of sandbags and scrap metal. She raised her radio. All units, hold your positions. Let them land. Make them come to us. From her right, Mara whispered. It's starting. The first enemy dropship landed with a bone-shaking crash. Its ramp slammed down, and Zarkari soldiers poured out, tall, armored, their weapons glowing blue. More ships landed, dozens, then hundreds. Alara drew her sidearm. Wait for my mark. The ground rumbled. The Zarkari advanced. Fire. Explosions lit up the night. The colony's old turrets opened fire. Rifles cracked. Shock grenades flew through the air. The defenders fought with everything they had. Zarkari soldiers fell, but they kept coming, wave after wave, pushing forward. Inside the underground tunnels, civilians huddled together. Children cried softly. Medics worked by lantern light. The ground shook with every blast above. Lieutenant Rico moved among them, checking on families. He looked up when a ceiling panel cracked, spilling dust. How's it going up there? Someone asked. He didn't answer. Back at the front line, Alara ducked behind cover as enemy plasma scorched the air above her. Mara fired beside her, shouting over the noise. They're pushing through Sector 3. Fall back to the second line, Alara ordered. The team retreated to the inner wall, dragging the injured with them. Smoke filled the air. Flames lit the colony in a dull orange glow. The 2 fighters screamed overhead, making short attack runs on enemy clusters. One was hit and spun out of control, crashing into the sand with a burst of flame. The pilot didn't make it. Alara clenched her jaw but didn't look away. Hours passed. The defenders were down to 10. Ammo was low. The enemy was at the gates of the tunnel entrances. Mara leaned against a wall, blood on her sleeve. This is it, Alara. We did everything we could. Alara looked around. The colony was broken. Fires burned in every corner. Bodies, human and Zarkari, lay across the battlefield. Still, she stood. She raised her radio one last time. This is Commander Vost. To any ship, any station. Varos 7 is falling. We need help. Please. No reply. Only static. Alara dropped the radio. Her hands trembled. Then, a sound. A low hum. Faint. Growing louder. Mara's eyes widened. "Do you hear that?" Alara turned to the sky. Above them stars began to vanish, blocked by something massive. Dozens of sleek silver ships dropped out of hyperspace. Massive carriers. Fighter swarms. Earth flags painted on their hulls. A blinding beam of light split the sky as a battleship fired its main cannon, vaporizing an enemy warship in one shot. Alara could hardly breathe. "No." Rico's voice crackled through the radio. "Commander, Earth's fleet just entered the system. It's them. It's the Supreme Fleet." The ground shook again, but this time from the force of Earth's arrival. Alara looked up as fighter wings soared overhead, fast and clean, tearing through the enemy like lightning. "They came," Mara whispered. Alara smiled faintly, her face streaked with dirt and ash. She whispered back, "I told you." The sky over Varos 7 blazed with light. Earth's Supreme Fleet had arrived. Not in small numbers, but with full force. Massive ships filled the air, blocking out the stars. Their engines roared like thunder. Their weapons lit up the sky in white and blue fire. Commander Alara Voss stood frozen for a moment, watching as sleek Earth fighters flew overhead. They moved fast, sharp, and precise, like a blade cutting through the dark. The lead ship, a huge carrier named ESS Valiant, hovered above the battlefield. Its hull shimmered with energy shields. Its cannons rotated and fired again, striking a Zarkari transport midair. The alien ship exploded in a bright flash, debris falling like metal rain. Mara stepped up beside Alara, still catching her breath. "They're really here." Alara nodded slowly. "They heard us." Across the field, the Zarkari forces were in disarray. What had been a calm and steady invasion turned into chaos. Their lines broke as Earth fighters strafed their ranks with laser fire. Dropships tried to escape, but were picked off one by one. High Marshal Krazek watched from the bridge of his warship, his jaw clenched in fury. "Where did they come from?" he shouted. "Unknown," his officer replied. "They dropped from hyperspace beyond our sensors. We didn't detect them until they were here." Krazek slammed his fist into the console. "Pull back, now. We regroup at the outer belt." "But High Marshal," I said, "retreat." His warship began to rise, engines burning hot, but it was too late. A piercing beam from the ESS Valiant's forward cannon struck the Zarkari flagship's wing. The ship shuddered and spun, smoke pouring from its sides. Fires erupted inside. Krazek escaped in a small pod, his face twisted with rage as he vanished into the blackness of space. On the ground, Ilara's radio crackled. A clear voice came through. "This is Admiral Callan of the Earth's Supreme Fleet. Varos 7, we are here. Stand down and let us take over the fight." Ilara grabbed the radio. "Admiral Callan, it's Alara Voss." A pause. Then Ilara, "I didn't realize you were still out here. You're not easy to forget." She smiled despite the dust and pain. "Took you long enough." "We only just got the signal," Callan said. "Your system's been jammed. We had to track it manually through old relay paths. But we got it. Just in time," Ilara said. Rescue teams landed quickly. Medical crews moved fast, helping the wounded, calming the frightened. Earth troops spread out, securing the colony with professional ease. Ilara moved through the crowd of survivors. People looked up, dazed and wide-eyed, as the giant Earth ships hovered above like guardians. One small girl, her clothes dusty and torn, tugged at Ilara's sleeve. "Are they really from Earth?" she asked. "Yes," Ilara said softly. "They are." The girl smiled. "I told Mama someone would come." Ilara knelt beside her. "You were right." Later that day, as fires were put out and defenses stood quiet, a small shuttle landed near the command tower. From it stepped Admiral Callan, tall, sharp-eyed, wearing the same silver and blue uniform Ilara remembered from years ago. He approached her slowly, arms crossed. "You look like you've been through hell," he said. Ilara gave a tired laugh. "I have, but we're still standing." Callan nodded. "And you held off a full Zarkari force long enough for us to get here. That's no small thing." "I had help," she said, glancing at Mara, Rico and the others. Callan looked around. You saved a colony that Earth forgot. We didn't need Earth, Elara said. We just needed someone to believe we mattered. Callan nodded. And you made sure of that. As the twin suns of Varos 7 began to set, Elara stood at the edge of the landing field once more. Earth ships hovered silently above. For the first time in weeks, the sky was calm. Her hands were bruised, her body ached, but her heart felt light. They had survived, and Earth had come. The next morning, the sky over Varos 7 was clear. No smoke, no fire, no shadows of enemy ships, just the soft glow of dawn breaking over the desert. For the first time in weeks, there was peace. Commander Elara Voss stood near the damaged outer wall, watching as Earth engineers worked quickly to rebuild the colony's defenses. Heavy lifters carried metal panels. Supply drops landed one after another. Medics treated the injured with better tools and medicine. It felt like the whole world had shifted overnight. Sergeant Mara joined her, carrying a metal cup of hot cafe. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't, Elara said, taking the cup. But I'm not tired. Not yet. Mara smiled. It's over, Elara. We made it. Elara looked toward the sky, where Earth's ships still hovered like silent guardians. We did. In the underground tunnels, the mood was different. Where there had been fear and panic, now there was laughter and relief. Children ran through the aisles, playing with toy ships handed out by Earth soldiers. Parents hugged their families. People cried not from fear, but because they had survived. Lieutenant Rico was helping organize supplies. He moved with more energy than usual. I've never seen this place so alive, he said to a nearby medic. I think we'll be okay. The medic smiled. You will be. Earth's staying. Later that day, Elara walked across the open landing field, where a silver shuttle waited. Admiral Callan stood beside it, arms crossed, watching the workers load gear into storage bays. He turned as she approached. You sure you don't want to ride back to Earth? Elara shook her head. I belong here, at least for now. Callan nodded. I figured you'd say that. He stepped closer. You saved this colony, Elara. You saved all of them. Earth will remember what you did. I didn't do it alone, she said. And honestly, I was starting to think no one would come. But we did, Callan said. And we will again. That's a promise. Elara smiled. Hold them to it. That evening, the people of Varos 7 gathered in the central square. It was dusty and cracked, but someone had set up a few lights, and a young miner had started playing music on a worn speaker. Families stood together, survivors shoulder to shoulder. Elara stood at the front of the crowd. She looked around and took a deep breath. We were forgotten, she said. We were left on our own, but we didn't give up. We didn't surrender. And in the end, someone answered our call. She paused. This colony still stands because of all of you. Because you fought, because you believed. We faced the dark together. And now we rebuild. Not just walls or towers, but trust, hope, a future. The crowd clapped. Some cheered. Others just stood in silence, holding on to the moment. Mara stepped beside Elara. So what now? Elara looked up at the stars. The ships, the open sky. Now, she said. Now we live. As night settled over Varos 7, the lights from Earth's fleet blinked softly above the horizon. They no longer looked like strangers. They looked like home. The people of the colony, tired, brave, and unbroken, stood together beneath a sky that was finally theirs again.